say they like it
was just telling
theoretically.
people to put their thermostats at 78 degrees because the grid can't handle it. That's what Denver just voted for last night.
That's not socialism.
They do not have the energy policies that we want. They want green energy. Says the grid is overloaded.
All right, but that's something different.
Chris Cuomo recently brought Lauren Boebert onto his NewsNation program for a heated discussion covering two topics that always spark strong reactions: energy policy and birthright citizenship. The conversation quickly turned into a tense back and forth, with both sides defending their positions while challenging each other's claims. We are going to break down some of the biggest moments from that debate, look at what was actually said, and then I want to give you my own perspective on how everything unfolded, because there is quite a bit to unpack. So let's jump right into it.
The pretend to be normal Democrats that people like myself and Gabe Evans in Colorado are running against, well, this is their party, and this is what we are running against as well.
I think that it's going to be a battle of whether or not more voters believe in the boogeyman, which is the systemic change of capitalism to something else, which hasn't happened in New York City. And even the socialists, they may say they like it theoretically.
was just telling people to put their thermostats at 78 degrees because the grid can't handle it. That's what Denver just voted for last night.
That's not socialism.
They do not have the energy policies that we want. They want green energy. Says the grid is overloaded.
All right, but that's something
just like
different.
California. The
grid is
going to
overloaded.
get there. And all of these, because they won't allow us to have efficient energy. They are shutting down coal-fired energy plants and not allowing us to drill.
The grid is overloaded. It's not about the type of fuel. It's about the type of infrastructure. Our grid is overloaded because you guys haven't passed bills to invest in it, and you won't make the private companies
what about the hundreds of millions of dollars that were
infrastructure
invested in the Green New Deal? That did not help anyone's grid infrastructure. And, these are the policies that were failing over the past few years. And now we are here working to get policies back in place with this very slim majority.
The Infrastructure Act.
I want to do more.
The Infrastructure Act worked for your constituency and worked for a lot of others also. You guys all took the money and you all did it to do public work jobs.
And Chris, you absolutely know that. Only 9% of the $1.2 trillion went to actual infrastructure. This was
But you took the money.
Well, certainly for the projects that were needed. But this 9% of an infrastructure bill going to infrastructure,
I agree.
Those days are gone. And we're
I
working
agree.
on
It should have been more and better. They should have been more and better. No question. I got one other quick question for you. Here's what I don't get. I have you want to say, hey, we shouldn't have birthright tourism. I agree. But it's not really that big a problem. What would be a problem is if a president, by executive order, can change the U.S. Constitution. Would you really be okay with that just because you don't like what's in the Constitution? Would you really be okay with the president changing it with his pen?
So Chris, I'm not okay with just an executive order, and I have been fighting within my own party and within this Congress to codify his executive orders. So if we agree with a policy, then we should pass that law and enforce that law. And so right now, it is up to us to codify that executive order after the Supreme Court decision. We have to talk about this because this is a racket, and we need to shut it down. There are current estimates that show tens of thousands of babies born in the United States every year as a direct result of birth tourism. Women in their third trimester coming and renting hotels just to get that precious document. There are estimates between 20 and 30,000 annually who are doing this. And that's not immigration. And it's not fair to the people who want to come to America and do things the right way.
I think the research shows that we don't know how many there are and that those estimates are seen as high by people who measure these kinds of things. But it is a thing. You could close it as a loophole. There's no question about it. You just have to do it the right way. And that means Congress has to act. And that's what they're not doing. They're not doing, and I say they, not you, because you've been a busy bee. Okay. And you want this to be a law. And I think that's you doing your job. And then people can judge whether they like the laws that you pass or not. I appreciate you making the case here, Lauren.
I want to start with the birthright citizenship portion of the debate, because that is where Lauren Boebert brought up figures related to what many on the far right describe as birth tourism. She referenced numbers ranging from roughly 20,000 to 30,000 births. As Chris Cuomo pointed out during the discussion, there is no clear agreement on the exact statistics. When I looked into it myself, I found estimates that varied widely, with some reports putting the number closer to 5,000, while others suggested it could be as high as 26,000. If you already view immigration as a major concern, those figures might initially sound alarming, but it is important to place them in context. Around 3.12 million babies are born in the United States every year, in a country with roughly 330 million people. Compared to those totals, this represents an extremely small percentage. It is not the widespread crisis it is often portrayed to be. Yet that kind of framing is something commentators like Lauren Boebert continue to rely on. The pattern is familiar. Small issues are often presented as if they are massive national emergencies, because fear is an effective political tool. We have seen the same style of argument with the debate over transgender athletes. A few years ago, the NCAA president said there were fewer than 10 transgender student athletes competing in college sports out of approximately 300,000 athletes nationwide. Despite those numbers, some political messaging leaves people with the impression that nearly every school, university, high school, or even middle school is dealing with the issue on a large scale. That simply does not match the available data. This is why personalities aligned with the MAGA movement frequently focus on subjects like these during television appearances, including on Chris Cuomo's show. The strategy revolves around identifying a target that can be portrayed as a major threat, giving supporters something to worry about even when the underlying issue affects only a very small number of people. Turning to the energy discussion, another major point of disagreement centered on Zohran Mamdani's suggestion that businesses consider raising their air conditioning settings to around 78 degrees during periods of extreme heat. Critics have often described it as if he wanted to force businesses to do it, but from what was presented, it was framed as a recommendation rather than a mandate. Suggestions like this are not unusual across the United States during the hottest parts of summer. Local officials regularly ask residents and businesses to reduce electricity usage a little, so the power grid is not overwhelmed and widespread outages can be avoided. To me, the reaction mirrors what we saw during the debates over mask wearing a few years ago. There is a mindset that rejects even small actions meant to help the broader community, focusing instead only on personal convenience. Then, if the electrical grid becomes overloaded and outages happen, many of the same people are often among the first to express frustration about losing power. That contradiction also extends into the larger conversation about alternative energy and long-term planning. Looking at the bigger picture, you might expect that rising tensions involving Iran, combined with higher gasoline prices and concerns they could climb even further, would strengthen the case for investing heavily in alternative energy. If dependence on oil from unstable regions creates economic and national security risks, it seems reasonable to ask whether expanding domestic renewable energy sources should become a larger priority. Instead, the political conversation often moves in the opposite direction. Rather than treating the situation as motivation to reduce dependence on oil over time, many leaders continue doubling down on traditional fossil fuels. The same applies to infrastructure. Regardless of political affiliation, maintaining and modernizing the nation's electrical grid should be something that benefits everyone. Whether someone is wealthy or struggling financially, nearly everyone depends on reliable electricity every single day. It feels like that should be one of the easiest areas for bipartisan cooperation. Yet the debate remains deeply divided because many politicians, including Lauren Boebert, approach these issues from a very different perspective. The overwhelming majority of Americans rely on the public electrical grid to power their homes and businesses every day. While someone like Elon Musk may have access to private energy systems or additional backup options, almost everyone else depends on shared infrastructure functioning properly. That is why investing in the grid should be a common goal. Strengthening it would reduce the risk of blackouts during severe heat waves and lessen the need for officials to ask people to cut back on electricity use in the first place. Instead, debates often become more about political messaging than solving practical problems. Watching Lauren Boebert's appearance on Chris Cuomo's program, I came away wishing Cuomo had challenged more of her claims with greater intensity. The discussion touched on several important issues, but it felt like there were missed opportunities to push for clearer answers and a deeper examination of the arguments being presented.